On the night Michael Irvin's career ended, 66,000 people cheered. He went down at Veterans Stadium in October 1999. Didn't get up. His teammates weren't celebrating. The Philadelphia fans were cheering louder. But that's not actually the story. The real story is what the NFL did next behind closed doors, and why nobody talks about it to this day. Before any of this makes sense, you need to know who number 88 actually was. Dallas in the early 90s had 3 Super Bowls and the most dangerous receiver in football, the heartbeat of America's team. Not just stats, Irvin was the personality. Troy had the rings, Emmett had the records, but Irvin had the room. He wasn't just catching passes. He was the voice in the huddle and the fire in the locker room, the guy who made everyone else believe they were unstoppable. The proof was in the record, because when Irvin missed games, Dallas went 8-13. When Aikman couldn't play, they went 12-6, and when Emmett was out, 1-2. The offense could survive without the quarterback and could survive without the running back, but it couldn't survive without 88. Before the Super Bowls and the Hall of Fame, Irvin was the 15th of 17 children growing up in Fort Lauderdale. His father, Walter, worked as a roofer and a part-time preacher. The family lived in a 2-bedroom house where 4 brothers shared one king-sized bed. They ate cereal with water when milk ran out. It wasn't just poverty. It was the kind where survival was a daily negotiation. When Irvin was 13, he skipped school. His father didn't yell, and he took him to work the next day instead. 14 hours on a roof in 110-degree Florida heat, hauling wet cement, laying tile. They broke for 15 minutes at lunch to eat sardines on the roof, crackers on the side. By sundown, Irvin's shirt was caked in sweat, and he collapsed into bed that night, vowing he'd never skip school again. He kept that shirt and hung it on his dorm wall at Miami, then in his house in Dallas, as a reminder of what he'd never go back to.
I put them on the wall in my dorm room, and every day I came home, I would say, either I make this work or I go do that.
That day changed everything for Irvin. He started playing harder, practicing longer, believing sports could be his way out. By his senior year at William M. Raines High School, he was getting looks from college scouts. Everything he was building was for one person, his father, the man who showed him that roof, the man who never quit on him. And then everything fell apart. You wouldn't expect this. When Michael was 17 years old, his senior season was 3 days away. Walter Irvin died from throat cancer. Just like that, the one person Irvin wanted to make proud was gone. Never saw him play at Miami or saw the Super Bowls. That haunted Irvin for the rest of his life. Years later, he'd say, "I can't wait to hit 52. Because his father died at 51 and Irvin was terrified he'd die at the same age." So this is a man who clawed into greatness, who fought through poverty, family struggle, and personal loss to become one of football's biggest stars. Everything he had was on the line. So how did it almost end on a Sunday night in Philadelphia? It happened on October 10th, 1999. Cowboys at Eagles. Nobody in that stadium knew they were about to witness the end of a career. Irvin caught an 8-yard pass from Aikman over the middle. Nothing special, just a short route. Bobby Taylor grabbed him. Tim Hawk hit him going down, and Irvin's head twisted awkwardly before it slammed into the turf. The 750th reception of his career. He didn't get up. The stadium didn't go quiet. It erupted. Cheers, then threw batteries, then chanted insults. When they lifted him off the field, 66,669 people were celebrating like the Eagles had just won the Super Bowl. Stop here for a second. Why were they cheering? Because this wasn't random hatred. Irvin had given them reasons. Philadelphia remembered every bit of it. 3 years earlier, on March 4th, 1996, was his 30th birthday. Police raided his hotel room. They found substances on 2 dinner plates, 2 topless dancers. He pleaded no contest and got 4 years probation, 5-game NFL suspension. Commissioner Paul Tagliabue added an extra game beyond the standard punishment, saying the incident had an extremely adverse impact on the league. But that was just the beginning. 2 years later, July 1998, training camp in Wichita Falls, Texas. Irvin got into an argument with offensive lineman Everett McIver over a barber's chair. Irvin yelled, "Seniority, punk, get the f heck out of my chair 4 times. McIver, 6'5", over 300 pounds, shoved him back. Irvin grabbed a pair of scissors and plunged them into McIver's neck, missing his carotid artery by inches. McIver needed stitches to close a 2-inch gash.
Yeah, I'm gonna cut him. And dude, let me tell you, they cut him here and so much blood came out.
Here's the problem. Irvin was still on probation from the substance charge, which meant one criminal charge meant prison. Jerry Jones brokered a 6-figure settlement. A judge ruled it was an accident during a playful tussle. Just like that, the case disappeared.
Normal person did it on the streets, they go to jail for a long time.
I just think that it just goes to show what money can buy.
So the fur coats, the persona, the 1996 conviction, the scissors incident, the feuds with entire cities, Philadelphia fans remembered all of it. He'd made enemies everywhere outside Dallas. When number 88 went down, they weren't just seeing a player get hurt, they were seeing karma. But Irvin wasn't thinking about any of that because he was lying on the hardest playing surface in the NFL, and he couldn't move his legs. The field felt like concrete because it basically was. In 1993, Chicago Bears receiver Wendell Davis had torn the patella tendons in both knees on the same play at Veterans Stadium. By January 2001, the NFLPA would vote it the worst playing surface in the league. Even trainer Jim Maurer knelt beside Irvin and reported he had limited motor function. Players from both teams dropped to their knees. Some were praying. Jerry Jones climbed into the ambulance. As the stretcher rolled out toward the tunnel, the cheers followed him all the way out. The Philadelphia Daily News ran a headline the next day. Unspeakable, even for us. That night, Irvin was in Thomas Jefferson University Hospital's spinal unit. He later recalled, "They asked me to uncross my legs. My legs were crossed, but I couldn't move them."
Uncross your legs. I think I was like this. Uncross your legs. And I thought I did.
CTE, spinal injuries, they aren't clinical terms when you're lying there not knowing if you'll ever walk right again while the crowd is treating it like a touchdown. The NFL saw exactly what happened that night. What they decided to do about it is the part that was never made public. 5 days passed before Irvin was back in Dallas wearing a neck brace. He visited the Cowboys locker room. His voice was soft, cracking. His eyes were red. He spoke slowly, without his usual enthusiasm. Everyone in that building could see the difference. He admitted he thought his career was over, that going through something like that makes you think it's finished.
You know, I couldn't control my arms and I couldn't control my legs, and I was more focused on that than anything.
Tests came back. Herniated disc and a swollen spinal cord in 2 places near the base of the skull. Bad, but manageable. Players had come back from that before. Daryl Johnston, his teammate and fellow 3-time Super Bowl champion, had surgery for a bulging disc in 1997. Came back to play all 16 games in 1998. Then the doctors found something else. Something Irvin didn't even know he had. Cervical spinal stenosis. He was born with it, a narrowing of the spinal column that had been sitting there his whole life, waiting. And here's what that meant. One more hit to the head, and Irvin wouldn't just be out for the season, he'd be paralyzed or dead.
And I have what they call cervical stenosis, which is a narrowing of the spinal column. And the next hit could be the last hit.
Career over at 33. The private conversation happened before the public one because league officials, team doctors, Irvin's camp all knew the full picture before it went public. Here's what the NFL never said out loud. The crowd's behavior that night triggered internal discussion about player safety optics. Not player safety itself, optics. But here's the part nobody saw coming. Irvin was quietly advised to retire before the diagnosis became a liability story for the league. No farewell tour, no press conference where the team thanked him for 12 years of service. He got a phone call. Think about that for a second. A phone call. The timeline tells you everything you need to know. By December, the Cowboys had placed him on injured reserve. By February, Dallas had already traded for Joey Galloway to replace him. By May, doctors officially advised him to retire. By July, at a news conference at Texas Stadium, he made it official at 34 years old. "I like to think of myself as a warrior," he said. "I wanted to be dragged off the field, and I was." The question was never whether Michael Irvin could keep playing. It was whether the NFL wanted to be responsible if he did. And here's why that question mattered. At this moment in time, the NFL's player safety framework was still years from existing. There was no concussion protocol. It wouldn't be introduced until 2009 and wouldn't be formalized until 2011. Mandatory exit procedures for injured players didn't exist. Independent neurological consultants didn't exist either. Return to play protocols and public accountability systems, none of it. The 300+ players who have since been diagnosed with CTE-related conditions weren't a future conversation yet. They were the guys still suiting up every Sunday. And here's where it gets worse. That same year, 1999, the NFL's retirement board made a determination about Mike Webster, the Hall of Fame center for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They ruled him totally and permanently disabled from repeated blows to the head. They paid him disability benefits. The NFL awarded disability payments to at least 3 former players after concluding that football caused their crippling brain injuries. They had the evidence in their hands. Webster's attorney later said, if the NFL takes the position that they didn't know or weren't armed with evidence that concussions can cause total disability in 1999, that evidence trumps anything they say. Mike Webster died in 2002 at age 50. The autopsy revealed CTE, a brain disease that until that point was believed to exist only in boxers. Yet from 2003 to 2009, members of the NFL's Mild Traumatic Brain Injury Committee were publishing papers saying no NFL player had experienced chronic brain damage from repeated concussions. In December 2005, they wrote that professional football players do not sustain frequent repetitive blows to the brain on a regular basis. Let that sink in. They knew in 1999. They said the opposite from 2003 to 2009. The settlement program has paid more than $1.3 billion to 1,846 former players since 2017. The league admitted no wrongdoing. But the numbers tell the story they won't. The family cost came later, because Irvin's post-career years brought the TV career, the Hall of Fame induction, and the breakdowns in front of cameras he couldn't explain. What he carried off that field in Philadelphia didn't end with retirement. It followed him home. The kid from Fort Lauderdale who fought for everything, who kept that work shirt hanging in his house as a reminder of what he'd never go back to, didn't get to decide when it was over. The league decided for him. Every player who's celebrated a big hit since that night is playing inside a system that learned exactly one lesson from Michael Irvin: how to manage the story. We told you nobody talks about what the NFL did. Now you know why. Because there was nothing to announce. Nothing officially happened. If this story hits different, hit that like button, comment on what you want us to cover next, and subscribe for more stories like this. You won't want to miss them.